Welcome to Increase Your Marketing Effectiveness, Strategy, and Strategic Partners. Just a couple of things to go over before I hand it over to Kelly. All the files that we have for you to download are in the bottom left corner. The top two listed are from today's webinar, and then the following three, I believe, are from the last webinar we had last week, so if you didn't get to join us for that one, you can at least catch up a little bit. To download those, just click on the title that you want and then click the button below that called Upload File. You'll have time for questions and comments throughout the webinar as well as at the end. So if you have a burning question or comment, go ahead and put that in the comment and question pod right next to the files. And with that, I'll hand it over to Kelly.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. If you were on a week ago today, last week, we had Webinar 1 in this three-part series that we are hosting. And before I go any further, I'm going to talk a little bit about who we is. The Capacity Building Assistance Provider Network, or the CPN, as you see in our logo on the slides, is a network of national organizations that works to provide technical assistance, training, and consultation to the HIV prevention workforce across the United States. That includes health departments, community-based organizations, and healthcare organizations that are working in HIV prevention. And I myself work at the resource center that supports the Capacity Building Assistance Provider Network. And my primary function at the resource center is to serve as a communication and marketing manager to help market the services of the Capacity Building Assistance Provider Network. So hence the reason that I would be your presenter here for increasing your marketing effectiveness. I have about 25 years experience in communications and marketing, and most of that has been in the nonprofit sector or the public sector. So I hope that I can impart a little bit of good information for you today. And also, I do want to reiterate what Alyssa shared at the opening about our files that we have available for download. We actually have the top 3 files are tied to today's webinar. You have your webinar slides. We have a marketing budget plan template that is an Excel document. And then we also have a tip sheet for developing your marketing strategy and identifying some partners in marketing and outreach for your organization. The last 2 files in that list in the pod on the lower left corner are from last week's webinar. And ultimately, we will have a page on our CPN website, which is also right under my picture. You'll see the web link. And that will get you to we're going to have a special page there on the website that will get you to all of these webinars and the materials associated with them. One of the things that we are in the process of doing is, as we complete each webinar, we record it and have it closed captioned, and the closed caption version will be what you find up on the website. We want to make sure our web materials are as accessible as possible. So we're going to jump in and get started, and as Alyssa said, if you have questions, please type them in the comments and questions pod. And I'll try to catch my breath and take a couple of breaks along the way and answer some questions if we have some there. So this first slide is really just a quick reminder for those of you who were on last week, and also just a little snapshot for those of you who might just be joining us for the first time. This is what we talked about last week. We talked about the importance of analyzing your target audience before you develop or implement any kind of a marketing or outreach campaign to that audience. And we spent quite a bit of time talking about open source data and how to gather demographic information about your audience. And then we also talked a little bit about conducting your own focus groups, and your tip sheet from last week's webinar has some great resources that I really want to encourage all of you to look into on how to conduct your own focus groups, and it gives a little bit more of a step-by-step guide. So demographic data combined with activity, interest, and opinion data, or AIO data, helps you develop a marketing persona or a profile, if you will, of the target market that you are trying to reach. So today we are going to build off of that audience information, and we're going to talk a little bit more about strategy and developing your strategy for reaching your target audience. So the first thing that we want to talk about is creating a marketing budget and then developing your strategy. I don't know if any of you have ever been in a situation where you come up with some great ideas and you've got a strategy and you've maybe even got some concept materials that you want to use in reaching out to your target audience, and then maybe you find out from your organization's leadership or a board of directors that you don't actually have a budget to implement that strategy. So we're going to really encourage the idea of working backward and starting with your marketing budget and developing a strategy from there. By working backwards, you make sure that you know what your costs will be, you make sure you stay within budget, and even if your budget is very small, it helps you put a price tag on everything and set up some reasonable expectations. One of the things that I do want to remind you of is that a marketing budget has to be balanced with your agency budget and your funder or donor priorities. In the nonprofit and public service sectors, there's always a need to identify priority areas for health marketing efforts and balance those with your actual service delivery priorities. So I don't want you to think that I was crazy and I typed really small and that you're supposed to read this slide. All this is just a screenshot of that marketing budget plan template, the Excel document that I mentioned. And this is available for you so that you basically have a document that you can start to plug your own ideas and costs into. And you know, I want you to be really creative when you start to think about your marketing budget and not limit yourself to just the categories that we have here, such as advertising and public relations and web costs. I think that these are just here basically as kind of placeholders and to get you started in idea generation. But we're hopeful that this can be a helpful tool to identifying your costs, putting those costs down on paper, and maybe even getting leadership buy-in into what your costs are going to be for a marketing and outreach initiative. So after you determine your marketing budget, you and your team are going to want to brainstorm about how you will reach your target audience. You want to think about how you have accomplished this in the past, make lists of what worked, what did not work, and what is something that you saw someone else do and you would like to try. Consider your target audience's demographics, their environment, and their daily interactions. And again, I'll reference some of that information gathering that we really focused on in Webinar 1. And it's from that information that you can really look at the demographics, the environment that your target audience is dealing with, and some of the daily interactions that you can likely guess they are having. So as you look at their environment, you want to think about things such as how do they travel to work and other activities? Are they using cabs? Are they using the bus? Are they using the train or a car? Do they live in a walkable community? Some of the day-to-day activities will give you clues into how you're going to reach them. Where does your audience spend time outside of work? Do they hang out at the bars, the gym, restaurants, the grocery store? Do they have a family? How does your target audience receive information? For example, you probably will not capture the attention of a 24-year-old HIV-positive male through newspaper ads, but based on his age, you might reach him through social media ads. If his demographic is known to ride the bus to work each day, a bus advertisement might make sense. But you want to look at all the modes of communication and how you think you might best reach your audience. Once you have an understanding of your target audience and their preferences, you can mix a variety of tools. You can think about things like banner stands at some of your community events, restaurant bulletin boards, social media marketing and advertisements, newsletters, email marketing, and even printed materials. There are tangible ways like print collateral that you develop for your program or your organization, promotional flyers, including material that's been translated into Spanish or other languages, depending on your demographics and your geographic area. You might have magnets with information printed on them or postcards. Whatever tangible materials you decide to use as a part of your marketing and outreach, be sure to share the same key messages through your online strategy as well to help make your entire message cohesive. There's digital collateral, monthly or weekly email blasts, social media, paid online advertisements. The screen here, we're just showing an example of an e-newsletter and an e-blast message. These are pieces that we've actually done on behalf of the capacity building assistance providers in our network. And we push these out through DataBank, a cloud-based customer management system, but there are a lot of options available such as Constant Contact or MailChimp. Email communication is typically sent to your organization's existing database. And one of the things that's going to be really important for all of your outreach is to grow that database. You can do this by putting a button on your website where people can click and sign up for emails, passing out a sign-up sheet at meetings and conferences. You just want to make yourself as available as you can to your target audience. Think about where your target audience likely spends the most time online, and that's where you might want to place ads. Facebook pay-per-click can be done fairly inexpensively, and you only actually pay per click. You can choose who sees your ads. You can serve up ads only to people who fit your audience's location, interests, age, or other demographic information. And you can purchase these same pay-per-click advertisements on most social media platforms. What are your brand or organization's keywords? If someone finds your website strictly through a Google search, what words were part of their search query? Make a list of the 25 most common keywords for your organization, and from that list, you can start to build the keywords that you want to make sure are included in the materials and the outreach strategies that you use. Search engine optimization strategy, those keywords need to be interwoven into the text on your website. Your social media ads, and your print collateral. I want to give just a slight cautionary word here. I think that when we think about social media, it's a fairly complex and a very busy environment. It requires a lot of attention from your staff. So when you're using social media as a part of your program or service outreach strategy, you want to decide what platforms your audience is most likely to use and limit yourself to a degree to which platforms you're going to use to communicate with them. I heard a great piece of advice last week in a presentation I went to at a conference, and that advice was, don't be afraid to try something, and then based on your experience or the data or the feedback that you get, if it's something that doesn't work for your audience, you can abandon it and try something new. But you don't want to get your staff into too many things, too many communication tools and vehicles where you're not able to respond to comments, questions, or feedback that you're getting through those tools, or you just can't keep up and make the information that you're sharing timely enough. So now let's talk a little bit about what you want from your target audience when they arrive on any of your platforms, whether it's your website, some of your social media sites, or if they meet your staff in person. The ultimate goal is to convert them into consumers of your product or service. So how do you convert followers into consumers? You spend a lot of time and effort to reach your audience. So when you do reach them, make it easy for them to request more information or contact you. Put your contact information on everything. Print flyers. Be sure to include social handles. Include a subscribe to our email pop-up on your web page, on your social media platforms, and your email blasts. Put your contact information, especially an email link, at the top and bottom of your web page. Integrate Learn More buttons in as many places as possible, including your social media platforms. And lastly, grow your contacts through a referral strategy. You can use your existing followers to gain more followers. Simply ask them to recommend 2 to 3 others who might find your services useful. You might offer a bonus for referrals, and it can be something simple but valued, like a gift card or candy. Just make sure it makes sense for your budget and it isn't prohibited by your funders. So the next thing we're going to talk about is sort of a segue from that referral strategy to talking about strategic partners in your outreach strategy. But before I do that, I want to take a pause here and see if anyone has any questions, or if you would like to make some comments about some of your outreach strategies and perhaps even the way that you've grown your own databases to reach out to your audience. It looks like Alyssa's already taken a couple of sort of technical questions about how to get to the files. Anything else? Anyone have any other questions they want to type into our question pod? I'll keep going, but don't hesitate if you do, and we'll just take a pause. So in addition to your own organization's individualized outreach, you may be able to improve results by partnering with other organizations. So today we're going to talk about spending some time looking into your community to discover potential strategic partners. A lot of research has been done around the value of partnerships. In a collaborative relationship, each partner gains credibility and may actually gain access to a greater critical mass of the desired audience. There's more information about strategies and methods that your organization can use to develop strategic partnerships in your tip sheet that's in the downloads pod. Potential partners should share at least a handful of overlapping principles so that there are opportunities to share resources, data, organizational administrative staff, or even processes. Sharing resources helps minimize duplication and it maximizes audience reach. This isn't just a good idea or a theory. Many health departments, community-based organizations, and healthcare organizations are actually required by their funders to establish service agreements or partnerships to maximize their reach, increase coordination and collaboration, and enhance support services. Think of potential partners who have a similar or a parallel mission to yours, or who are serving a similar or parallel segment of the population. How might you bring your missions together? So, if your mission is centered on HIV prevention, your purpose is to educate those who directly impact or influence the goal of preventing the contraction and spread of HIV/AIDS. Based on your target audience research, and you can refer to webinar 1 from this series, you know a portion of your target audience has some of these demographic characteristics. Some of them are HIV-positive gay men. They're in that 14 to 30-year-old age group, living and working in the Miami, Florida area, low income, and little to no post-secondary education. So based on that target audience that we built a profile around in Webinar 1, we're going to talk a little bit more about strategic partnerships that could help us reach that target audience. Your goal is to be noticed by that target audience segment, but you might be outside of their everyday circumstances or awareness. A strategic partnership might help you reach them. So today we're going to talk a little bit about an example of a nonprofit housing organization. Because you know your target audience is predominantly lower income and often housing challenged, perhaps a strategic partnership with a local not-for-profit program providing young adults with food, shelter, and skill building activities would be a benefit. While their mission is to provide housing and a means of survival to young adults, their service is provided to some of your target audience. Together, you could both play a part in improving the quality of life for the same population group. Your goal of preventing the contraction or spread of HIV could be more achievable through a partnership. How to find strategic partners. Let's talk through some of the steps that we would go through to identify and reach out to potential strategic partners. Use the information you've collected about your audience. In Webinar 1, we identified Milena, a community health worker, and Michael, a young gay man, as our examples. You can download Webinar 1 in the download pod. Make a list of which organizations in your community might already be engaged with or serving your audience. Where are these potential partners located? What opportunities might exist for collaboration? Could you share training and education for staff? Could you collaborate in social media outreach? Could you share focus groups to just identify more about the needs and preferences of your target audience? Could you host awareness events together? How might you implement some of these partnership activities? Could you start the same conversation or topic on social media together to grab one another's audiences? Maybe be a guest speaker or ask someone from their organization to join you as a guest speaker at a training event. Be a guest writer for each other's newsletters. Arrange and host shared focus groups or host an event together to raise awareness. What's in it for me? What's in it for your partner? If you go into this relationship building with strategic partners, better understanding your partner's needs, and create a list of reasons why a partnership might be beneficial for them as well, it'll help in that relationship building. You have to do your homework before you reach out to potential strategic partners. And be prepared to communicate what your organization can bring to a partnership. What kind of value do you offer your partners? Connect with them. Make a call. Arrange a meeting. Start the conversation. If you recall from Webinar 1, we used some case examples with a real-world organization. We're going to refer back to our case study from Black AIDS Institute, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to stop the AIDS pandemic in Black communities by engaging and mobilizing Black institutions and individuals in efforts to confront HIV. Referring again to Michael, who is our young Black gay man living in the Miami, Florida area, after Black AIDS Institute reviewed what they knew about their target audience, they identified activities for their marketing strategy to reach out to this audience. So all of these little bubbles around Michael's head are just things that Black AIDS Institute was able to identify about this audience that they were trying to reach. They identified a number of Black faith leaders, elected officials, and approached them to ask if they would partner in message development and outreach to their target audience. BAI partnered with several faith organizations and social organizations to plan and conduct focus groups to gather more information directly from members of the target audience. And they targeted and delivered some of their messaging through their partner organizations. So whether you utilize low-cost outreach efforts on your own or develop strategic partnerships to help expand your outreach, our objective with this webinar was to give you some ideas about developing a specific marketing and outreach budget and leveraging strategic partnerships to make that budget go farther. I want to take another opportunity to take questions. Anything that you want to comment on or maybe even share challenges that your organization has had as you reach out to different audiences that you're trying to serve? So we've got a question here from Carolyn asking me to repeat what you do with keywords that you mentioned coming up on slide 19. Okay, so bear with me here while I go backwards through some of my slides. The keywords, okay. So the context that we were talking about keywords was predominantly in the search engine optimization realm, but I think that this applies to really all of your marketing efforts and ensuring that you have some consistency and commonality running across your different marketing and outreach materials. So the suggestion that we're making is that you make a list of 20 or 25 words that you think are important. They're key words for your organization or your program and what you're trying to achieve. And then you go look at your website, your brochure, your other marketing materials, some of your social media content, and you make sure that those most common keywords for your organization or program are woven into those different materials. That helps you ensure a couple of things. It helps that people who might be searching for the kind of service you offer would find you if they did a Google search. It also helps ensure that if somebody picks up your brochure or meets a staff person at a conference where they did a presentation and then they go to your website, that they see some consistency and common threads through the various information that you are pushing out to your target audience. And then Carolyn had a follow-up question. Do you use these for Google AdWords? Yes, you can, and I think that it probably depends a little bit on what they are and how you want to use those in Google Ads or Facebook pay-per-click or different strategies. Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks for asking. I know we have a couple of staff people from our Capacity Building Assistance Provider Network, and if any of you want to type any comments or share any of your experiences in terms of partners that you've identified, I'd love to see some of those start showing up. I think that sometimes we maybe stay a little bit more narrow-minded about who our partners might be. We used the example today of an HIV prevention organization partnering with a low-income housing organization to try to reach the same target audience. But I'd sure be interested to hear if any of you have comments that you could share about how you have partnered with maybe not the top of mind type of organization that you would normally think about partnering with for outreach. I see you guys are answering each other's questions. That's great. Thanks, Danny. Danny Nguyen is on the line. Danny is with API-AHF, or Capacity for Health, one of our capacity building assistance provider organizations, and glad to see that the conversation is going on around key performance indicators or benchmarks. So Bobby Thompson has shared an example of a partnership that they've had, a local promoter to have HIV Awareness Club Party. So AIDS Services of Austin is asking, what are the best key performance indicators to track in terms of marketing effectiveness? This is always a hard one. There's a lot in the literature that talks about, return on investment and performance indicators, and a lot of the tools that we're using, sometimes we don't have all the tracking mechanisms in place to know, where did someone see our message? Was it the banner ad that we paid for on Facebook? Was it a bus placard? Was it, in a local restaurant on their bulletin board? Sometimes when we have, a seminar or a meeting where in a sign-in form, whether it's electronic or on paper in person, we might ask people, how did you hear about us? How did you hear about our service? That's one mechanism that you can use to try to track how people are getting their information. Search engine optimization and looking at your web analytics is one way that you can really track how some of that is meeting with success or not. I'm trying to read questions and keep up with all of you. Julie Eichhorn from University of Rochester is typing in that a health department that their team worked with on testing together intervention used a local radio station to get the word out about a new service they offered. In fact, they had a test counselor take calls and answer questions live on the air, which let callers stay anonymous and learn more about the program. Therefore, informed other listeners, and they also used bus advertisements. Julie, thanks a lot for sharing some of that as an example. And I see Danny typing in again. I'd welcome any other input on the most important key performance indicators that you all think should be tracked. I think definitely web analytics should be up there if you have a web presence. So just a quick recap of some of the types of partners, you know, a radio station, a local promoter to help sponsor an awareness club party, bus advertisements. We're getting a few ideas generated and shared about what kinds of strategic partners can be identified to help deliver your messages. So Danny Nguyen from Capacity for Health is sharing again that something to think about when it comes to the suite of marketing platforms, from email to social media, search engine optimization, ads, etc., is that your organization and staff might not have the bandwidth to handle all the hands-on responsibilities in producing all of that content. So you might want to think about what it would look like to budget or have contractors such as copywriters for some of your collateral, your social media content, management agencies, etc. I really appreciate that comment, Danny. It reinforces what we were talking about on one of the slides about all the different platforms that are out there and available, and you do have to think about your staff bandwidth and how much time they have to give their full attention to some of these different social media tools and other outreach tools, and making sure that you keep the level of quality in your communications that really represents your organization and, you know, puts out the image that you want to put out. So really good comment about maybe blending a little bit of contract time with your staff time so that you do have the appropriate hands-on capabilities for producing all of the content that you need. Any other questions or comments people have? We're about 20 minutes ahead of a 1-hour time block that we put out here. I'd be happy to give you all some of your day back if we don't have any other questions. I'm going to remind you about the files that are in the download pod. You can take all of those files that you would like. The links to our website are my email link is up there, and then also we always encourage our partners to go check out the Act Against AIDS website. Lot of great information and ideas and campaign materials that you can access and utilize if you're in a health department or a community-based organization working in HIV prevention. And please feel free to reach out to us, and we have a info@cpnresourcecenter.org email on our website, and we answer that every day. So we'll keep the line open for a little while, but I want to just say thank you to everybody who took time out of their day to be on here, and we hope you can join us again next Thursday on May 11th. We will have our third in this series of marketing webinars, and hopefully we'll have some more tools that we can share that you'll find useful.